guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock and it's time for another video. And today I want to talk about performing on stage. And more specifically, I want to talk about how you can take a close-up trick and make it work on stage. And the reason I'm talking about this is because one of the questions I get on this channel over and over again is how you can go from being a close-up magician to being a stage magician. And it's something that I had to go through as well. You know, for many, many years, I just went out there and I just did close-up. And one day I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to be a stage magician. And I made every mistake under the sun and then some. But fast forward several years, I actually prefer performing on stage than I do performing close-up. Even though I love close-up magic and I always will, I actually prefer performing on stage. And the reason is, when you're doing close-up magic, at most events, you're going to be seeing a lot of people. You're going to go to different groups of people, right? Now, the problem with that is you could have the best group in the world. You could have the best audience ever. The problem is, it doesn't matter how good that audience is. After 5 minutes, they're going to go, and you're going to be, or you're going to go, and you're going to have to win over an entire other audience and win them over again and again and again. That, coupled with the fact that the performing conditions sometimes aren't great. You might be in a really loud room where the DJ's playing music really loud. It might be that you're in a room where it's impossible to get around everybody. I actually prefer doing stage. Because with stage, I walk out on stage and I get the audience's attention, and then for however long the show is, 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, I get to take them on a journey. They get to know who I am. I don't have to go and win over somebody else. I just get to take them on a journey, which means I can be more theatrical in terms of the routines that I'm doing. It means that I can build from one routine to the other, as opposed to trying to cram everything into 5 minutes. The other thing is, when you're a stage performer, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way or has experienced this, I'd love to know in the comments down below, you tend to be treated a little bit more seriously when you're a stage performer. When I'm booked to do a stage show, or I'm booked to do a cabaret spot or an illusion show, normally I've got a dressing room, I'm given a meal, I'm given a drink, I'm kind of almost treated like royalty in many cases. They've had a technical rider beforehand. They've had all my requirements. Even if I'm working through an agent, they say to me, right, okay, so what do you want? And so on and so forth. When you're working a close-up job, and this isn't always the case, because there's some close-up jobs that are fantastic, but other close-up jobs, it's like, oh, where am I going to get changed? And it's like, yeah, well, the disabled toilets are over there. That never happens with a stage show. And for some reason, you tend to get taken more seriously. In fact, people that inquire for close-up magic through my website, because the website talks about stage magic as well, they kind of put me on a different level just by seeing the fact that I do stage magic. So I've been a big advocate on this channel of people doing stage shows all the time. And in the past, I've actually done videos on how to put together an awesome stage show and how to transition and so on and so forth. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch more of these videos as well. But today, I wanted to talk specifically about one thing, which is how to take a close-up trick and make it work on stage. Because when somebody wants to go and start performing on stage, the best piece of advice I can give you is flight time, experience. The more time that you perform on stage, the more experience you have performing on stage, the better that you're going to get at it. And there's no substitute for experience, which is why one thing that I always suggest you do is, if you're getting a booking for a close-up job, offer the client to have a 10-minute spot on stage afterwards at the end of the night. Hey, would you like me to throw a 10-minute spot or a 20-minute spot on stage at the end? Because in all honesty with you guys, when you are performing on stage after doing close-up, it is a much easier experience than if you're going on stage cold, because you've met all of the people in the audience, you've performed close-up to them, you've established credibility, they know that you're good, they know who you are. So when you then do that spot on stage at the end of the night, it's a much easier experience than walking onto a stage in front of a few hundred people cold, with no fanfare, or nobody knows who you are. You're just going to walk out and you've got to win them over. So I always say that when you want to perform on stage, the best way to do it is to try to upsell the client that's booking close-up on having a bit of a spot on stage at the end of the night. And when I say stage, it doesn't have to be stage. You know, I did a garden party the other week, and I suggested, hey, at the end, should we gather everyone around and do a 15-minute spot for everybody? And they loved the idea. Now, initially, if you've got no experience on stage at all, you can do this for free. You can say, hey, I'd like to throw you in this for free, and it's a great thing to throw into the sales pitch to push them over the edge so they book you. But as you get more and more experienced, it can be a proper upsell, and you can say, well, normally a stage show is this much, but if you book my stage show, because you're having close up, I'll do it for this much, and you can actually upsell them on that. So if you agree with me that the best way to get good at stage is by flight time and by having experience, the first thing that you need is put together a little 10 or a 15-minute stage show for yourself, right? And initially, you don't want to be spending a lot of money on props, because the thing with stage magic is there's a lot of money involved in it. You know what I mean? My stage show, I've got some stuff that costs relatively little, but I've also got some stuff that costs a lot of money, like literally thousands of pounds, you know, to do a stage routine. And when you first put that stage act together, you might not want to spend that money, right? It might not be something that you want to spend money on. So the best way to do it, the best way to do it is to make close-up tricks work on stage. And I've read in various different discussion forums that, oh, you can't make close-up tricks work on stage. It's impossible to make close-up tricks work on stage. Yes, you can. Even on the biggest stages of 200, 300, 400, 500 people, you can make close-up tricks work on stage as long as you approach it in the correct way. So I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of advice in this video about how to take a close-up trick and make it work on stage. Okay, so a couple of little pieces of advice. So the first piece of advice I can give you is select the right type of material. Okay, so select the right type of material. That's really important. Obviously, there's certain close-up tricks that aren't going to work very well on stage. You know, if you don't have rear projection, if you don't have a TV behind you, and you're literally standing on stage, sitting at a card table with all of the magic taking place on the card table and doing intricate sleight of hand, you might be the greatest sleight of hand artist in the world. You might be the love child of Jason Ladany and Darwin Ortiz. It makes no difference. If people can't see that, then they're not going to become invested in it, right? So it's really important to make sure that you can be seen. It's really important to make sure that whatever routines you're doing, they can be seen from the audience. So if you've got routines that work on a table, don't do them unless you've got sort of the ability to have a massive screen behind you and all of the stuff that you're doing on that mat is projected onto the screen. Having said that, that's another piece of advice I could give you. Now, you're probably not going to be in this situation, because if you're learning to put a stage routine together, you're probably not going to find yourself in a situation where you have got a TV or a massive screen behind you. But let's just say that that is a possibility, then take advantage of it. You know, if you have the ability to have like a projection of some close-up stuff, then by all means do it. I know, for example, Smoke and Mirrors, which is one of my favourite venues to perform at, which is Mark Bennett's theatre in Bristol. He has a TV that swings down, and he has a camera that goes directly down on top of the mat. So everybody in the audience can see very, very clearly what's happening on that mat, which is why it's absolutely perfect. You're in there, you can do intricate sleight of hand, and nobody in the audience will miss out on what's going on, even though the seating means that they wouldn't be able to see it normally. Because of the TV, they can. Now, having said that, if you are in that situation, you don't want to make every single trick like that, but it is something to bear in mind. So the next piece of advice I'm going to give you is select the right type of material. There are certain tricks that will work on stage. There's certain tricks that will work on stage as long as you as long as you're aware of what works on stage and what doesn't work on stage. So I'm going to give you a perfect example. Fiber optics, or any type of rope routine, but I'm going to use fiber optics, for example, by Richard Sanders, just because everybody knows what fiber optics is. Fiber optics by Richard Sanders is a fantastic routine that, although a lot of close-up performers do it, and I see so many people do it at big tables and walk around and mix and mingle, this is a trick that will play to a huge audience. It's a trick that will play really big because everybody can see the rope, everybody can see what's going on. That's a perfect example of a trick that will play to a really big group of people. Another example of a trick that will play to a really big group of people is something like cards across. Now, you've got to pick the right type of cards across, and we'll get to that in a minute. We'll talk about that with another point in a second. But cards across is great because you can have two people up on stage and they can very clearly see that 10 cards are being counted here and 10 cards are going to be counted here. They can see it plays big. Everybody can see what's going on. There are many tricks that will play on stage, but you've got to be aware of which ones will and which ones won't. So using cards across as an example, if you've ever seen my Visible project and you see the routine invisible cards across, which I also put in my Penguin Live lecture, that won't work on stage. It just won't, because it's all designed to be done on the mat. It's a close-up piece, or at best, it's a parlor piece. It is not something that you're going to be able to do on a big stage, right? So that's something that you really need to be aware of. But there are routines that will work on stage. Another piece of advice I can give you is bring volunteers up on stage with you. The act of bringing people up on stage really makes routines play bigger. Now, if you've seen a video that I put out a little while ago on how to run an awesome parlor show, or how to put together an awesome parlor show, you see that I do a routine in there to close the set using John Allen's destination box. Now, John Allen's destination box is a close-up trick. It's basically a card to impossible location, right? It's a card to impossible location. But the way that I do that trick, it plays to the biggest audience. And I do that in my illusion show quite regularly to thousands of people. And even though it's a card trick, it plays to the whole audience. And the way that I've made it play to the whole audience is by adapting the routine so that it plays bigger. And that's another important point to take into consideration. Have that routine play bigger, so it plays to the whole audience, right? Have that routine play bigger so it plays to the whole audience. In the destination box routine example, if you actually think about what I'm doing there, I'm giving a box to a member of the audience at the very beginning, so I'm involving members of the audience. Then when the person comes up on stage, they pick a card, and rather than just trying to find the card, you've got that moment where we're standing back to back and they throw the cards over their head while I'm blindfolded and I don't see them and they go everywhere. It's playing the trick bigger. It's taking a classic close-up trick like card to impossible location and making it so it plays to a big audience. And that's really important. You can take routines that are close-up tricks and you can make them play to a big audience, but what you have to do is you have to think through the choreography of the trick and think through, am I going to get a volunteer on stage? What purpose is that volunteer going to solve, going to take? All that sort of thing is very important. And also, don't be afraid to do card tricks. Like I just talked about how I close my parlor show using this destination box routine. Well, that's a card trick. Basically, the effect is a signed card goes into a locked box that's been held by the audience from the very beginning. Well, I mean, come on. It's a card trick, right? When you think about it, it's a card trick. But the thing is, you have that volunteer up on stage. So if I just took the card out of the box and said, look, that's her card, well, some people in the audience, especially at the back, might not be able to see it. But that person being on stage, they look at the card and they go, yes, that's my card. Their reaction confirms to everybody else in the audience that that is indeed their card. And that's when the reaction gets bigger. That's when the reaction gets stronger. That's when you start to play a routine like that to a big audience. So think about how you can structure the tricks and the props that you're doing to make it play bigger than it actually is, if that makes sense. Now, the other thing that you need to take into consideration, and another piece of advice I can give you, is the use of music in your show. One of the big differences between a close-up performance and a stage performance is the use of music. Music can take any routine and make it play bigger. And I'm going to give you an example. Using Ryland. So we've just finished performing at the House of Secrets, right? Just finished performing at the House of Secrets, and Ryland does a routine in his new show, which basically is a coin routine with a quiver. That's all it is. It's a coin routine with a quiver. He has a quiver. He has a quiver purse with $4 half on one side, $4 half on the other side. He tips the four. He has this opening line, which is, "I've been doing magic since the age of 2. The first trick I ever learned was how to make a coin disappear. Making coins jump from one place to another is one of the hardest things you can do in magic. I'm going to try and show you that live tonight." He then brings out this purse. He walks out into the audience. He tips the coins out the purse, and he has somebody look at the coins and examine them. He then he has them look inside the purse and make sure that the purse is empty, and he holds them in between his hands, and then he just brings them back on stage. He vanishes the coins one at a time, and then goes into the audience, takes the quiver, tips the coins out, and shows they're back in the quiver. It's a coins across. It's a quiver routine. But I've seen him perform that to 50, 100, 150, 200 people, and it brings the house down. And the reason it brings the house down is through the use of music. It's through the use of music in the act that makes that routine play bigger, because in essence, he's just vanishing 4 coins, right? But the use of the music, in fact, I'm going to show you this. Now, I haven't got footage of the whole thing. I haven't got the footage at the beginning where he actually talks about, hey, but I only started the camera partway into the routine. So I've got the moment from when he gives the person in the audience the purse and then walks up on stage. So I'm going to play that for you now. So let's have a look at that footage, because that's a perfect example of what I'm trying to put across here. So let's have a look at that and listen to the choice of music. This music is actually from Forrest Gump. But listen to the choice of music in the routine and how it actually makes a routine like this play bigger.
As I said, I've been doing magic since the age of 2, and the first trick I learned was how to make a coin disappear and appear somewhere else. I've got 4 coins. Watch this.
So that's an example of how musicality can make a routine play bigger. And people like Russ Stevens and people like Scott Alexander, you know, that's one of the ways that they take routines and make them play to a bigger audience. They do it through the use of musicality, right? And one thing that I always do is I spend hours and hours and hours every single day listening to music, because I'm always trying to add music into my illusion show and into my cabaret show to make the show bigger through the use of music. So you can take, in essence, a coin trick there, which is basically just a vanish of 4 coins. And you can make it play bigger by involving a member of the audience and through the use of music. So that's another example. It's very, very easy to put together a 15 or a 20-minute show using routines that are already in your close-up set. Look at Paul Daniels, for example. He did the chop cup routine on stage in front of hundreds of people. I've done multiple selection in the past, which is a close-up trick really, getting 10 people to pick cards. And I've done that in the past to hundreds of people. In Ryland's new show, he actually uses Dean's box. Now, Dean's box is marketed as a close-up trick, but he does it on stage to a whole bunch of people. So my advice to you, if you're putting together a stage show, and I really highly encourage you to put together a stage show, the first thing that I would do is I'd write down all of the tricks that you do in close-up that you feel comfortable with. Because the other thing, if you can take a trick that you do in close-up and you can transition that onto a stage, well, you're probably already going to feel comfortable with the routine. Because when you first perform on stage, one of the big things is nerves. Your nerves will be amplified performing on stage than they will be doing close-up for a couple of different reasons. One, you're standing in front of more people. And two, it's an uncomfortable new environment that you might not have performed in before. So by using routines that you already do, you're going to be a lot more comfortable going out on stage, right? So, for example, the way that Ryland opens up his stage show is with Rubik's Cubes. He does a cube routine because he is so comfortable doing cubes, he doesn't have to think about it. He can do it upside down, back to front, left to right, and back again. So he always opens up his stage show using Rubik's Cubes, right? So write down a list of all of the different tricks that you actually do in close-up that you think that you could actually put into a stage show and have them play bigger. And then when you've got that list of tricks, what I want you to do is I want you to go through each one of those tricks. And I want you to think about what you would need to do to the presentation of that trick in order to make it play bigger. Do you have to add an extra prop? So for example, when I do, we'll go back to Cards Across again. When I go and do Cards Across on stage, and you've probably seen videos of me doing this, I'll do a version of Superfly by Scott Alexander. Now, all I'm doing there is I've added a zombie gimmick or a glorpy gimmick to a Cards Across, and I've added envelopes. The use of envelopes, though, isolating the cards, and the use of this glorpy gimmick, and the use of music, really adds to that routine. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to play that for you as well, just in case you've not seen this before. This is my version of Scott Alexander's Superfly. Now, Scott was the idea of, he came up with the idea of using envelopes and using the glorpy gimmick. That's all Scott. The method is very different. I'm using sleight of hand and palming. He's not. But the concept is the same. This is in essence a Cards Across, but using envelopes and using music towards the end, and using the zombie gimmick makes the routine play a whole bunch bigger. Now, would I do this version on stage that I'm doing here in the performance? Would I do this close up? Absolutely not in a million years. But I do Cards Across using basically the same technique, but there's no music, there's no envelopes, there's no zombie gimmick. Other than that, it's exactly the same. So it's taking a routine that I do in close-up and making it play bigger through the use of a couple of different bits and pieces. Let's have a look at that performance very quickly. So there you go. So that's an example of what we need here. So take your list of tricks and what can you do to each one of those tricks to make them play differently, to make them play bigger to a bigger audience? Can you script them differently? Can you add music? Can you add a volunteer into the performance in order to have that play bigger? Can you add an extra prop? Can you change the moment? What can you do to make that routine play bigger? So for example, if you're doing a Rubik's Cube routine and you're genuinely solving a Rubik's Cube, for example, well, could you do that by being blindfolded is a perfect example. So when Ryland does close-up with Rubik's Cube, he does a timing force, but on stage he does Venom Cube because it makes the whole routine play bigger, right? And that's what you need to do. Think about how you can take your existing close-up routines, make them play bigger. So take each one of those close-up routines, work out what you can do, and then just try it. The best piece of advice I can give you about transitioning from close-up to stage is just go and do it. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you. Just go and do it. So yeah, I mean, we're going to do a few more videos like this of transitioning from close-up to stage, but hopefully that's going to become useful for you. And we're going to do another one of these videos very soon. So there you go, guys. That's another video in the bag. Do me a favor, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now, do you want to see more videos like this? Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. If you haven't already done so, please go check out the NETRIX. It's www.thenetrix.com. You can go check that out and let me know what you think and see what all the fuss is about. We've got so many members now that are absolutely loving every second of it. And, you know, there's a real buzz with the silver level, with the virtual magic clubs as well. So thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who's supported me and supported NETRIX. It's only going to get bigger and better. If you want to see more specific videos like this, transitioning from one thing to another, again, please let me know. I'm going to be back again. Tomorrow with another video. So thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again soon. My name's Craig from Magic TV.